We're here with John O'Looney. He is an undertaker and he is the director of the Milton Keynes Family Funeral Services here in Milton Keynes, England. John, thanks so much for joining us.
You're most welcome.
So let's cut right to the chase. When did you start having some suspicions that something strange was up during the pandemic?
Well, to be honest, I think from the very start, when we were told, so the way it worked was I had a family come to see me in 2019. In end of November, beginning of December, they said they'd lost someone in a neighbouring borough, and they were upset that the hospital wouldn't allow them to visit their loved one in a chapel of rest. So I kind of said to them, look, don't worry, I'll go and pick them up promptly because it's important that you do that anyway, for obvious reasons. And whilst I was at the hospital in Northampton collecting this person, I happened to ask the mortuary staff there, I said, you know, why wouldn't you let this family see their loved one? He opened the door and there was a pandemic tent inside this viewing room. And I guess the viewing room was 8 feet by 15 feet. And it was pretty much full of this great big pandemic tent. So I kind of said to him, well, what's that for? And I kind of knew it's for extra capacity for deceased. And he said, we've been told there's something horrible coming. And he didn't mention the name COVID. They broke the news in January and I was frightened. I'll be honest, I was worried. You know, as a funeral director, I'm in my 50s. Here's a disease they're telling us is people are falling over in China. We've been shown footage of that. I thought, you know, I was worried because I've got to handle these people, you know. And it over the course of the next 12, 16 weeks, I gradually began to see through the narrative, and it wasn't what they were showing us on telly. And it was a number of things. One of the main things was in March of 2020, I took a phone call from a guy whose name was John, funny enough. And he said, I work for a government-sponsored company. So ministerial, one of the government ministers had this company. Mm-hmm. And he said, my job is to ring all of the undertakers as part of the pandemic response. And I was like, fine, what do you need to know? You know, you want to help because I'm here to help. Right. And he said, I need to ask you various questions. I'm going to call you every Monday. He said, I'm going to ask you how many you can hold, your capacity, who you've picked up, where from, and how many are COVID. And I was happy to answer that. You know, why would you not? And I was making that effort to find out that information, knowing during the course of the week, knowing that he would call me on the Monday to give him that information accurately on each deceased. So I would, straight away, he started steering me. And by that, I mean, I would say to him, I'd picked up someone from a local care home. It's a big facility, nearly 100 beds in there. And there was no doctor present. There was no COVID test done. So this guy wasn't COVID. I spoke to the staff there who confirmed this was an onset dementia patient. Mm-hmm. He'd been there 5 years. Then when I met the family at the point of arrangement, they told me, they confirmed, yes, he was an onset dementia patient. He'd been there 5 years. Straight away, this guy would openly admit he had to record him as a COVID death. And I was kind of, well, what's the point in doing this if you're going to fake the figures? You know, this isn't... And he did that throughout 2020. And he said, well, I've been told to because they had one guy there that had taken a PCR test, given a positive test, didn't die of COVID, but went on to die. And so from that point forward, everyone that passed in that facility was put down as a COVID death. They
because
never
of
died.
That one test result.
Yeah, they were instructed to do that. Yep. None of them died from COVID. But so what that meant was that there were no more deaths than normal, but there were loads of COVID deaths. I mean, I've been an undertaker 18 years, and I can tell you that in 2020, that's the only year I've ever known not a single winter flu death, not one. Everyone was COVID. So by the end of 2020, this guy rang me in October and he openly admitted to me, because you get to know him over time. You know, if somebody rings you every Monday and you have, I don't know, a minute or two exchange. Oh, morning, John, you get to know him, you know, and he openly admitted to me he didn't know why he was doing the job because everyone is saying the same thing. There are no COVID deaths. And he openly admitted that to me. And by the end of October, he actually said to me, I'm not going to be calling anymore, John. I said, well, why? He said, there's no need. Now why is there no need in October of 2020? Because they knew. And I think Rainer Fulmick put it perfectly, is that the vaccines were never about COVID. COVID was about the vaccines. So they put down so many COVID deaths that by 2021, everyone was saying, save me.
Okay, yes.
And then the moment they had these jabs, then people started dying straight away. Yeah, it was 300% increase from, they started vaccinating locally here on January the 6th, and the death rate went through the roof straight away, and they called it the second wave, and it wasn't. It was just people that were being vaccinated were dying almost instantly.
And they're still calling it long COVID, whatever.
It's not, it's vaccine damage is what it is, yeah, that's the bottom line. And as they went down the age groups, because they started off here by kind of dangling a carrot and saying only the most vulnerable need to be vaccinated, then only the over 70s and only over 60s, then over 50s, then, well, if you're in your 40s, and then the over 30s, and they went down the list. And as they went down the list, that perfectly correlated with who was dying. That age group were the ones dropping down dead from COVID. And it wasn't COVID, it was vaccine damage. And I was washing and dressing them all the way through 2020 when nobody else would. I was taking them out of the body bags, washing them, dressing them. I never wore a mask ever.
Are you saying you saw an uptake in younger and younger deaths that perfectly matched the vaccine schedule by age?
As they went down, yeah, 100%, yeah. Right.
Annie Bukacek is the first doctor that I found in the States who told us all about the extra funding that you would get, the bonuses for listing patients as COVID. Same thing happened here in England?
Of course, yeah, massively. They were paid big money for everyone they put on ventilation. Well, inevitably, that blows the lungs out. Doesn't help. It destroys the lungs. Remdesivir, the pharmaceutical companies I know were offering huge discounts on all the other pharmaceutical products a hospital took if they took Remdesivir. I've had doctors and hospital staff reach out to me and tell me, you know, I've got 100 nurses' details on my phone, my mobile phone. Some of them cried down the phone because they knew what was happening. Most of them have left nursing because they know what they were doing. They knew what they were doing. And how many outcomes do you need to see in a patient that you give Remdesivir? Now, I would urge your listeners, Google side effects of Remdesivir, a really good website to go. There'll be loads of search results come up. One of them is drugs.com. Wheeziness, tight chest, difficulty breathing, kidney function, liver function. And I was picking these people out, and I remember picking them up, and they would be in body bags, and the body bags would be swimming in body fluid edema, half full. And I'd never seen that before. And I remember that at the time thinking, what's causing that? You know, this COVID must be terrible. And what it was the Remdesivir, because the Remdesivir destroys the kidneys. So your body can't then process fluid. So you fill up and you drown. And that is your respiratory illness. And in the latter stages of your kidney failure, you drown. That's how you die from kidney failure, is you drown.
And the hospital just marks it off as COVID.
Of course it is, because they're getting thousands of pounds. Yeah.
Sure.
I took a phone call I had the meeting with Sir Graham Brady. So I took a phone call from Mark Sexton in beginning of September 2021, and it invited me to a meeting in a place called Birdcage Walk in Westminster. It was Boardroom 1, and present at the meeting were a number of very famous people, some of them I knew, and some of them I'd heard of, some of them I hadn't. Dr. Tess Laurie, Professor Dolores Cahill, Dr. Sukrit Bhakti, Dr. Sam White, Dr. Stephen Frost. Lawyer Anna de Bisseret was there. There was a barrister, Francis Hall, and another lawyer, a really good guy called Philip Highland, and a number of other people. It was about 18 in total. Some of them were on a screen at the end of the table. And the guy that chaired the meeting was a guy called Sir Graham Brady. Now, at the time, I wasn't overly familiar with politics, probably the same as your average Joe. But he was the commissioner of something called the 1922 Committee. So this is a group of very senior MPs that sit in the background on a black square, hidden in the shadows, and they hire and fire prime ministers. So they select and fire prime ministers, Boris Johnson, Liz Truss, Rishi Sunak. They decide when it's time to go and who to take on. So there is no one more senior than him, because he was the commissioner of this committee. So he's the chief of this committee. And he listened to what we said. And we all had 5-10 minutes. And I kind of said what I knew up to that point was there were no COVID deaths. They were labeling people as COVID, and people started falling over and dying the moment they started vaccinating them. And I listened as it went around the table in disbelief at what these scientists and doctors and medical people predicted. They said the cancers were going to go through the roof, the heart conditions and blood clots, and they went into the mechanics to explain why. And they presented reams and reams of A4 wads of evidence to Sir Graham. He openly admitted, he said, it's well above my pay grade, I can't stop it. And I went in there thinking, last someone's listening, and I came out knowing that is a deliberate agenda.
Now, speaking of the mechanics, as an undertaker, you are also an embalmer. So, when did you start seeing that there was something strange? Explain the mechanics of the embalming process as it relates to what you have discovered.
Okay. So there are two types of death. There is a sudden death that's unexpected, and there is an expected death. And the difference between the two, for example, is if you get terminal cancer, and you know you're going to die, and you've been given a prognosis, and you get sicker and sicker, and you're put on palliative care, that's an expected death. Where someone is run over or just suddenly has good health but drops down dead, that's an unexpected death. And that means that the coroner gets involved, and they take your body to the coroner's office, which is usually in the hospitals, and they do what's called a post-mortem. So the way they do that is they cut you down the middle, take your sternum out, take all of your organs out, inspect them, blocks and slides and tests and toxicology. And then when they're done, they put them in a plastic bag. The bag goes back in and you're sewn up. And that's the way that works. Now,
and you were also bled dry.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you are during a post-mortem. Yeah, 100%. Because you're just cut to pieces.
Yep.
So when
are your blood vessels filled with something?
No.
They're not.
No. Okay. So the way it works is, and how we stumbled upon it was, we embalm people. So during the embalming process, there are two types of embalming, and they correlate perfectly with a post-mortem case or what we call a straight case. A straight case is an expected death where there's no post-mortem done, and the body is essentially intact. Sure. So that includes the circulatory system. And the way we embalm is we use that circulatory system to embalm. So we make an incision below the collar line into the carotid artery, and we have an L-shaped nozzle on a pump. And we cut halfway through an artery, we pop that L-shaped nozzle in, tie it off, put the pump on, and it pumps formaldehyde throughout the body to preserve the body. And the fluid is also pink in colour, and it puts colour back in people, and you look at your best rather than your worst. Obviously, with a post-mortem case, you can't do this because they've been chopped about.
Yes.
And that circulatory system, that pipe network, is all chopped about and violated. So if I was to put it in there, it would be leaking everywhere because it's all been cut. So the way that works is you take the stitches out, open the cavity up where the coroner has done that. You take the bag of organs out, and then you are left with an empty cavity. And you can see inside that cavity very clearly because it's empty. And you can manually target the severed arteries. So, for example, you've got a femoral artery that runs down, the main artery runs down each leg, and you can see it kind of there. It's like a cut straw.
Sure.
It's very clear, and you can target that and put fluid down it. And you, as the fluid goes down, you can see the toes going pink. So you know you've got the fluid where it needs to go. Then you move to the next leg, rinse and repeat for each limb.
Sure.
Now, as we've gone to do that, we had a young lad of 30 in. He was in really good condition, bless him. We've all been 30 once. He was in his prime. And we were asked, because he was young and he had a big social circle, can you embalm him? A lot of people want to come and see him. Not a problem. We opened him up. He'd had a post-mortem, and his arteries were totally blocked. So my embalmer has grabbed his tweezers and gone to pull the obstruction out, and pulled and pulled and pulled, and pulled a complete white, fibrous calamari type clot that ran the full length of his leg, from the top of his leg down to his ankle. And because obviously the vessels, as you go further down the ankle, they become smaller. So to pull a big clot uphill is no problem because it's a big, long, kind of tapered wedge. You know, if you were pulling it the other way, you wouldn't be able to, but you can pull it uphill. And that was when we first noticed it. And we got about half a pound out of this young lad. I can show you the photos and supply them to you if need be. And so obviously it's quite troubling. Now, I've been an undertaker 18 years. I'd been an undertaker 14 or 15 years at the time. I'd worked for the coroner for 7 years on body recovery. So I have a vast experience of what the inside and outside of people look like, because I've picked them up out the road in bits, or when they've been shot or run over by a lorry. I know what is normal and what isn't. And I might not know the Latin phrase for every nerve and fibre, but I could look him, I know my way around a body. My embalmer is British Institute of Embalmers certified. He's BIE registered, and he's done 25 years now. He's never seen anything like it. So I kind of knew what was happening by mid-2021, and I emailed my local coroner in the hope of getting a paper trail. And I said to him, listen, we've had this young guy in, we picked him up off you. I know he's had a post-mortem, and you've done that post-mortem. We found a load of really unusual white fibrous clots inside him. I know you must have seen them because you've had him before us. We took samples. Would you like those samples? What is it? And he wouldn't reply to the email, which is really unusual. I can get an email. I usually get a reply within an hour, you know.
No interest.
No interest at all. So 4 days later, I took a phone call from one of the girls in the office. And she said, oh, hi, John, you know, it's about your email you sent the other day. I spoke to the pathologist, and he tells me to tell you not to worry. It's perfectly normal, and that this stuff grows inside people post-mortem. So after death, some people, their arteries fill with rubber.
I've seen that argument in comment sections. Like,
it really
baloney,
isn't. It really
it's
isn't.
normal.
Now, there are certainly, you get different types of clots. I would have seen them before. Why would I raise concerns about it unless it was something I totally had never seen?
You've been doing this for 18 years.
It wasn't even like a subtle on the spectrum of anything I would expect to see. And I have various samples. I'll bring those to you to have a look at. My BIE registered embalmer has said exactly the same thing. He said, well, I've never seen anything like this. This is horrific.
You can categorically say that in your early career, or in your career?
I've never seen anything remotely resembling this stuff. Somebody would die in a care home. They would ring the doctor, and he would say, yes, tell the funeral director to collect. I would be on site within half an hour. I'd be embalming people within an hour of them dying. They certainly wouldn't be full of these white clots within an hour of death if they grow post-mortem. Nothing grows in your body when you die. Nothing. Decomposition, mildew, maybe some sort of mold spores might grow as you start to break down and we return back to the earth from whence we came. That's a natural process. White rubber inside your arteries isn't, and I'd never seen it prior to the vaccine rollout. And then from about halfway through 2021, and I'm in a group of a growing number of undertakers and embalmers that are all talking about seeing it. You know, your Richard Hirschmans and many, many others.
They've gone public.
Yeah, they've gone public. I can give you a list of, an email list of names. It's growing number as well.
Were you the first in England?
I was probably one of the first globally, yeah.
Globally, yes.
Yeah. And why was that? I think because I saw it. I can see a real biblical crime going on here, and people are dying full of calamari type clots that are not natural. I've never seen them. A growing number of people are also saying the same thing since I've spoken out. Now, is that mass hysteria, or is there really substance to that? And what's more troubling is not the fact that I'm finding it, but it's the reaction of the people that are actually paid to protect us. They're poo-pooing it and ignoring it, and it is there. I can show you countless tubes of it, and evidence, physical evidence, that they won't even talk about. It's also reflected in the number of excess deaths that are happening. You know, the under 14s, it's up about 30%.
Yes.
It's undeniable, and these people are still poo-pooing it. Now, I've got two avenues to go down. Either say nothing and just carry on taking the money, or speak out, because I actually would like a future for my kids.
Right. Right.
And I can see what they're doing. And I've been with a growing number of people that I think more and more people are seeing it as what are we going to do about it? Because here, what could we possibly do except withdraw our consent and turn our backs on them? I think that's what it's going to be.
Now, for the people that you say poo-poo it, and as the evidence mounts up and gets bigger and bigger, are they deluding themselves, or are some of them actually so evil that they do know what's going on?
There are different people with different fingers in different pies.
Yeah.
Money was the main driver for this initially. So to give you an idea, doctors here were given £10 a vaccine, up to a maximum of 100 vaccines a day before they were taxed. So £1,000 a day, tax-free, 5,000 British pounds a week, tax-free. So they were chasing that. Their surgeries were put on bonuses. So once they reached 60% of their patients, they got a big bonus. Once they reached 70%, they got another bonus. The pharmaceutical companies are offering big discounts on drugs if they're taking things like midazolam, remdesivir. And of course, these people, they're following government guidelines. They're only doing what they're told to do. There's a pandemic on, and we've got a chance to earn a load of money.
Yes.
Why would they not do it? Now,
well,
as they're then
for
watching
the fear of God, maybe?
Well, yeah, but I don't think they saw it earlier. I don't think most people are inherently good. So I think to get people to believe that the people in society that we trust the most are actually orchestrating a cult, it's very difficult to convince people of that.
A cult.
Yeah.
Yes.
But that is the case. And Agenda 2030 is very, very real. I've had doctors in here who have openly admitted to me, a number of doctors, not one, not two, a dozen GPs have come in here doing cremation paperwork. And they've actually stood at that unit there, filling it in where he's sitting. And I've said to them, and there's various gateway kind of avenues you have in a conversation. I've kind of said, well, doctor, I said, are you seeing an increase in death rate in vaccine recipients? And they all have the same look, and that look is universal. They go like that because they're horrified that you know.
Yep.
And then they look at the floor. Every one of them does exactly the same look because they know.
And then they go home and sleep well?
Yeah, of course. And then they thank me, say it's nice to see me. They take a check and they walk out the door like we've been talking about the weather. The last one was a female GP who was in here, and she said to me, have you been busy? And that was all I needed. I said to her, well, of course I have. I said, we've got loads of vaccine recipients dying, haven't we? She went, yes, what a terrible world. That was her response, was it's a terrible world. But it's a terrible world that you're making happen. You know, it's too late. These people have been vaccinated now. They're ticking time bombs, you know. So some of them, it was said that early on, many of them received placebos. And the idea of that was to recruit you as advocates. So let me explain. Right. If you went for a jab and you had a placebo, what adverse reaction would you have?
Zip.
None.
Yep.
So you go home and you tell everyone how wonderful
it's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Look at me, I'm healthy.
You don't mind going to get the next one.
Right.
And the next one. And every time you're playing Russian roulette, click. How many times can you do it before you get a kill shot, before you get the clot shot, or before you get the one that gives you cancer? And I'm prepared to put my ass on the line to warn everyone about what they're doing, because I don't want people to die. I'm happy to do little old men and little old ladies that have had a full life and have left a legacy. I don't want people in their 30s and 40s that are leaving 2- and 3-year-old kids behind. And I'm seeing that on a regular basis now. So the cancer thing, we used to get, the point I made earlier was I build a relationship with the family because it's me and my wife all the way through, even on the day of the funeral. So you get to know them and you say, you know, what happened to mum? And they say, oh, she had cancer. And I say, well, what happened? And they would tell you the cancer story. Mm-hmm. And it would be a 2-year, 5-year, 10-year story.
Sure.
Now, 16 weeks, 12 weeks.
No kidding.
Yeah. And I'm not talking about the usual 60, 70-year-olds.
Right.
30, 40, 50. People that don't die traditionally from cancer are dying
let alone
in a fraction of the time. Yeah.
Right.
The consequences of not speaking out at all are far more serious than the consequences of facing these Satanists, these demons, and fronting them down. Because when you do that, and when you empower yourself, and as soon as you confront these people, who know that you know what they're doing, they buckle, they wilt like a flower under the sun. Yeah, I've seen it firsthand. I've laid on a COVID ward and watched them killing people.
So this so-called death protocol with the wrong drugs and the remdesivir.
So the drug here, they come under various brand names. I think Veklury is one, and remdesivir is the British equivalent.
Right. Isn't there something called midazolam?
Midazolam is a sedative drug, so that's used primarily in a care home environment. Now, when you think there are two tiers generally in care homes, we have the people that are chronically physically disabled, so they can't look after themselves and they need care. And then you've got people that are physically very fit but are mentally disabled. Now, gone are the days where we tie those people to beds.
Sure.
That's done chemically using drugs like midazolam.
Yep.
It's also one of the cocktails of drugs that they use for capital punishment in where they have lethal injection.
Yep.
Is one of the 4 or 5 drugs they use. And it's a sedative. So there are certain amounts used in these care homes. And here in the UK, where we have an NHS and a national healthcare system, much of this, it's public money buying it. So it has to be published online. There are accounts for that public money. And you can put an FOI in, a freedom of information, and it's accountable. They used between 300 and 1,000% more midazolam during 2020 and 2021.
That's bombshell.
So I've got loads and loads of these white fibrous clots that I pulled out of the arteries of deceased people,
Would it be kosher for us to see?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I can get those out. Here are the clots, Dan.
Here's the clots. Oh, my.
So each one of those files represents a person.
No kidding.
Yeah, so they're red when they come out initially, but then when you wash them off, they're white underneath. They're set in formalin, which is formaldehyde. And
yes.
If there's any remnants of blood on them, it's burnt in the formaldehyde and it goes black. And you'll notice that they're all a universal size, more or less. And this is because they were all taken from carotid arteries specifically in the neck. So none of these were post-mortem cases. These were all people that weren't post-mortemed, and we just did them embalming from the carotid artery. And as I said before, as you put the pump in, when you withdraw the pump, there's back pressure, and this is spat out of the arteries. So this isn't arteries, this is what was inside arteries.
And you never saw this sort of thing before the vaccine?
Never. And I've got a BIE registered embalmer who's done 25 years, who also has never seen it, and countless other doctors and embalmers that I've spoke to. You know, I get invited to meetings, virtual meetings every week now, with up to 100 professionals in. They're all seeing it now. Unfortunately for many, it's going to be too late. I've been liaising with a group of people who are quite, shall we say, expert, and I can't go into too much detail, but they suggest that the gene therapies, which is what these vaccines are, have harnessed the body's ability to produce scar tissue. And this is scar tissue, fibrin that's been produced to repair damaged vessels, but they're putting it into overdrive. So it doesn't just repair a vessel, it keeps growing until it blocks the vessel. Wow. So it's harnessed the body's natural process and put it into turbo mode with an aim of killing people off. And what does that death appear to be? If you get a blocked artery, what happens? You get a heart attack.
Yes.
You get a stroke. Those are normal deaths. Yeah. So.
And look at the superabundance of heart attacks and strokes and blood clots.
Yeah, of course. So you're not going to get those out with heparin and drugs like that. They're not going to work. It's a totally different formula. Yeah, it's not going to work.
You need an operation.
I've seen them physically removed from living patients. I've been given videos of it happening. In fact, Richard Hirschman will tell you more about that when you speak to him. He's been liaising with a surgeon who was actively pulling them out of live patients, vaccine recipients. So it's kind of like the worst kept secret in the health service now. They all know. They all know. Yeah, they do know. Yeah, I would say 90% of them know. In fact, I think a good guide is very recently they published the figures on COVID boosters, and the NHS workers who refused a booster was 71%.
Because they know.
Yeah, of course they know. It's about saving people. the truth will set us free. Because when people they learn the truth, they'll turn their back on these people.
That's all it takes.
Yeah, and we can build. We can go back to grassroots level community.
Yes,
where he's the plumber, he's the chippy, he's the undertaker. Yes, he cuts hair, and we don't need these people. They need us. We are their power. What have they got without us? Nothing.
And we don't have to go through the digital banking system to pay the undertaker and the plumber.
They want to enslave us. Right. Wait until you've used your carbon footprint and it declines your card.
Yes. Or you've spoken out against something.
Of course, social credit system.
Right.
In China, they're locked out of their own apartments. People need to wake up and see it before it happens. It'd be no good trying to react once we're enslaved.
That's right.
So get out there and spend cash, guys. Yeah, spend cash.
Yeah, I agree.
100%.
Yep.
Yeah. It's good to meet you, Dan.
Great to meet you, John.
And you.
Thank you so much.